Hey up everybody, and welcome back to the Audi Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Tour de Pologne. It's a little bit last minute just because the start list took a while to be announced. Important to take a look at the stage profiles. So stage 1 looks like it'll end in a sprint. Probably Olav Koy will win this. He looks like the fastest sprinter in the race. Stage 2, I think we saw Thibaut Nace win up this climb last year. I can't remember exactly which stage it was, but it's one of the only hilltop finishes in this whole race, so you won't see big time gaps here. If the Thibaut Nace victory from last year is anything to go by, but you get to see some gaps emerge amongst the GC favourites, but I don't think they'll be that big, a few seconds here or there. Stage 3 has the most altitude meters of any of the stages. I mean, it's up and down all day. It takes in kind of like a lapped circuit, and then we go up this climb 1.2 k's at 8.8%, and then we have a steady sort of net downhill with a little kick up to the line. But again, I think this will be a fight amongst GC contenders and punchers mainly, and it'll probably end up in some sort of sprint amongst those sorts of riders, or maybe somebody could shoot off solo, something like that, or a small group gets away from a large group. There's a few scenarios that could work out there. Stage 4, we've seen this finish before. I think Marijn van den Berg has won here, if I remember correctly, but the finish line, slight drag, 700 meters at 4%. I think that Koy will probably still make this. If he doesn't, it'll probably be for Brennan, but I think that Koy, again, we'll probably do quite well there. Stage 5, a tougher stage. We've got this 4.1k, 5% climb. It's unclassified, but that's going to really create a little bit of a selection, get the sprinters out of there, and then we're going to have a bit of a sprint amongst punchers. Then we're going to have another, I think Thibaut Nace won up here also last year. The Scania Bukovina climb, 2.5k's at 8%, and then 1.8k's at 7.5%, a little bit flatter to the finish, but again a puncher stage. And then lastly, a 12km time trial with a bit of a climb towards the start. So GC contenders with a bit more of a time trial will do quite well here, but they'll probably, they might put somewhere between, I'd say, over 12k's. You're looking at somewhere like 4 or 5 seconds a kilometre between a good person and a bad person in a time trial, so you're looking maybe somewhere between 30 seconds to a minute. But anyway, Velogames. We have a lot of expensive riders here, actually, so it's going to be quite difficult to pick which ones are the best, but you got multiple riders here who have, can all do well. All these 18 credit riders, you can provide an argument for why they would be a good pick. So I don't think necessarily any of them are bad picks. I would say that my favourite ones are Vatsek, based upon the fact that I think it was in the Tour de Wallonie, which he did recently. He won that. He's got a really good time trial. It wouldn't surprise me if he won the TT, the last TT. He can climb well, he can sprint decently. He seems to pretty clearly be the leader for Lidl Trek in this race, at least in my opinion. So I like Vatsek a lot. I also like Ulissi. He's got a very good reputation in this race. He's pretty much always in the top 10. Lots of the stages suit him. He's got a good sprint, so he can compete in a lot of these stages. Yes, he will lose time in the time trial, but he's not a terrible time trialist where he won't lose too much, so I think he can still be a top 10 candidate. So I'd say those two are my favourites. The other ones are still good. You got McNulty, Sheffield and Tiberi, who I think are all relatively similar in that they can all climb, they can all do a very good time trial, but none of them have a particularly fast sprint, which I think will be quite necessary in a lot of these stages, but they should all be in the top 10 of GC for sure. And then you got Van Hills, who, although I'd say is very much like Ulissi in that he's a super good puncher, and he could compete in a lot of stages. His time trial isn't that great, so he'll probably drop quite a few places in GC, and that makes him less attractive to me as a pick just because of that. But in theory, if he could do a bit of a Thibaut Nace from last year, he could also be quite good. But if he's like Thibaut Nace from last year, Thibaut was 12 credits last year and won 3 stages. Even if Van Hills did that, I'm not sure at 18 credits he'd be worthwhile picking. You need somebody who's going to be up there in the overall GC at the end of the day. And his lack of time trialling definitely doesn't help with that. You got Bilbao and Poole as your 16 credit riders. I would prefer to go with Max Poole, just based upon what we saw at San Sebastian. We didn't see Bilbao really doing that much. We also didn't see Tiberi doing that much in that race. It's worthwhile noting. Poole, on the other hand, I think Picnic Postonel really need the UCI points at this point of the year. Poole has a decent sprint. We saw that in the Giro. He's got a decent time trial, which we also saw in the Giro. And I think that Poole is a pretty safe pick for a top 10 in GC. The 14 credit riders, you've got a few more to be going at. Bettiol, Brennan, Kristen, Coy, that I mentioned a couple of times when we were looking at the stage profiles. And Danny Martinez. I like Brennan, Kristen and Coy the best. Coy just because I think he could get 2 stage wins on, what was it, like stage 1 and stage 4. But is that worth it for 14 credits? I think that somebody like Brennan can honestly do a decent GC here. If the Tour of Norway was anything to go by, he can survive these tough uphill tests. He might find it a little bit difficult, but I think Brennan he can also time trial quite well. So I think Brennan's a really interesting one. Kristen was super good in the San Sebastian. He can time trial pretty good. He's a good puncher. So I think Kristen's probably one of the ones I would strongly recommend you picking. Brennan and Coy, you can kind of take it or leave it if you want to. It's a bit difficult because Coy will get the absolute sprints. Brennan probably won't. Brennan will be more for the puncher stages, so he's going to need to do really well on those. If Coy wasn't here, Brennan would be an absolute must-have, but the fact that Coy is here makes it a little bit 50-50. Bettiol, although he might get his own opportunities, I think they'll work for Ulissi here because, again, they love UCI points. And Danny Martinez just haven't seen that much of, so I don't really know what to... I don't really have much of an opinion on whether you should pick him or not. He might be good, he might be bad. I just don't know. Kung, Magnier, Micah and Vandenberg as your 12s. Magnier and Vandenberg as your more sprinter types. You've got Kung, who if he can hang on up the climbs, he could do a good time trial. But you really need him to be on his best climbing legs. And then Magnier and Vandenberg, kind of similar to like maybe Magnier. They could hang on for maybe one more stage. I think like they might hang on for this stage 5, I would say, whereas Coy might not. But that's probably the only advantage they have over Coy. But I think both of those should be getting 3 top 10s realistically in this race. The 10 credit riders, again, you got sprinters in Aniakowski, Bennett, Budzinski, Decline, Godin. Those sorts of riders are Van Uden, Gerber Tayson. Yeah, you got a lot of sprinters here, but I don't think the sprinters would be fantastic value for money in this race. I think that Finn Fisher Black is a really interesting one who can time trial. He's got a good punch. We saw that in the Tour Down Under earlier this year. So I think that Finn Fisher Black is probably my favourite 10 credit rider. I like Godin just for his greater versatility. However, he won't be going for the flat sprints on stages like 1 and 4. Like maybe Bennett will... If Bennett survives stage 4, he'll get the nod. Godin is a bit 50-50, but I like Godin nonetheless. Honore will probably be top 10 in GC. If he was a little bit cheaper, maybe like an 8, I'd be more tempted. But he's been in decent form. He did got top 10 in a Spanish one-day race the other day, so he's clearly in some sort of decent form. Valter as well, maybe he'll be the GC rider for Visma Bike, but he's recently been announced to be signed he's being signed by Bahrain Victorious for next year. Zambanini, I swear he was top 10 last year, but he was also 6 credits last year, so that's why he's more expensive. So overall, I would probably go Finn Fisher Black, and then after that, if you needed another one, I'd go with Godin or Honore, or maybe Zambanini, something like that. I'd probably stay away from the sprinters, just because if Coy wins a stage, then you're automatically like, you're getting further and further down the point scoring scale. But Godin has a bit more versatility about him. The 8 credit riders, Bassato, I quite like. He's very versatile. We saw that in the Giro, that first stage. He can survive some really tough hills and can still get a decent sprint in, so he could have multiple opportunities. I also like Ethan Hayter, and I know we're back again with Ethan Hayter. Is he going to break my heart again, sort of thing? But Hayter is a good time trialist. He should do good on that final stage, and so long as he just survives the other stages, he doesn't need to necessarily score that well, but he could still end up near 200 points, which isn't too bad for an 8 credit rider. You got Cantor and Michels as cheaper sprinters, but Michels will be competing with Vandenberg, so there's a bit of a conflict there. Cantor, on the other hand, gets his own opportunities. Gaviria as well has won a stage of this race in the past. Quentin Hermans, I think it's like Jensen Plowright will be their flat sprinter, but Quentin Hermans might do quite well on a lot of these punchy stages, but will lose out quite badly in the TT. But if Quentin Hermans is on form, he will likely compete in a lot of these stages and do pretty well. Timton Teutenberg I like as well for the flat sprints, but the more versatile sprints, they'll probably go with Vatsek to try and get bonus seconds. Vernon as well is another good sprinter to be considering, but probably will only get 1 or 2 sprinting opportunities. And yeah, that's probably about it for the 8 credit riders. The other ones are all just a bit kind of fringe GC riders, like Stana Mittet, Haig, Formolo, George Bennett, etc. They're all not really that. Maybe Voisard, he might get a top 15 because he's got a slightly better time trial. The 6 credit riders, I like Hubart actually. I think he was like, in the Tour of Norway, lots of punchy stages there, he was top 10 GC, I think. He was also good in that very punchy stage of the Tour de Romandie, which Brennan won. It was like pretty early on in the race, maybe like stage 1 or 2. So Hubart I like for this race. I think that he's looks in good form this year. Frigo possibly, because he can do a decent time trial. Thibaut Gruel I like as well. He is a good puncher. He'll get involved in the sprints. I don't think Groupama really of anybody else. So Thibaut will be a good pick in my opinion. 6 credits, you're not really risking that much. Timo Kielik, they might sprint with him. They might sprint with Jensen Plowright. You just don't really know. Langolotti, he was also very good in the Tour of Norway, which I think is quite reminiscent of this race. Kind of very punchy, shorter climbs, and Langolotti was very good in that race. Again, he will lose out in the TT, but 6 credits, if you can get in some decent scoring from those punchy stages before then, it doesn't really matter that much. Ian Livens I like too. He was 4th in the Belgian Champs road race. He can sprint pretty fast. The only other sprinters in the race for them are Tamanio and Elia Viviani, but Livens is a decent puncher. Maybe he could be up there in some of the grippier stages, so I think that Livens is one which a lot of people will probably skip over, but it's worthwhile pointing him out. Rasmus Søjsborg Pedersen, the Danish champ. I don't know who they'll be sprinting for, because they've got Bennett, they've got Godon, they've got Lepera, they've got Søjsborg Pedersen. It could be any one of them, really, so it's a bit of a risk going with him, but he is the Danish champion, and he is a very good rider. Jensen Plowright, I think he'll get the nod on the first stage, but I don't realistically see him surviving much more than that. Probably not Noviero. I think they'll be sprinting for Magnier. There's also, Sobrero maybe just for that final TT. Bartseng is a decent climber, so maybe he'll be a top 20 in GC just through, finishing relatively high up in some of those punchy stages. Tesfatsion I really like, just because Movistar don't have a big GC leader in this race. He was good in Tour de Wallonie, so I think Tesfatsion is very suited to this race. Lots of stages suit him, so he's a good value rider. And that's probably about it for like the really good ones. Then the 4 credit riders, I like Lars Boven. He is a good sprinter. He hasn't had a very good year, and like I said, they've got Kielik, they've got Quentin Hermans, and they've got Jensen Plowright. So I don't know where Lars Boven fits into this whole plan, but he has been a good sprinter in the past. He has got top 10s in sprints, so he's a pretty low risk rider. And I would say other than him, you're really looking at just getting assist points, or going with one of the Polish national team riders and trying to bank on them getting in the breakaway. That's really the advice I would give. So in terms of GC assist points, you might go Urmanov for Bahrain because they have Bilbao, Zambonini and Taberi. You might go with Starker-Lagen because they have Micah, Kristen and McNulty. You've also got Mihailovic for Bahrain if you wanted to double up on those riders. There's Jonas Koch because Red Bull have Finn Fisher-Black, Maxime Van Hills and Danny Martinez, so you could go with him based on those 3 riders. Pepijn Reindling does tend to get in the breakaway quite a bit, just so you might go with him if you fancy chancing your points in the breakaway. And other than that, I'd say in terms of the Polish national riders, there's a couple of them who I think it's... I'm trying to remember which one it is. I think it's Pomorski. I think Pomorski's one of them. And Gadjulovic. I think maybe they are in the youth or available for the youth classification. So they might get in the breakaway to get bonus seconds to try and finish in the white jersey on stage 1 or something. So maybe you might decide to go with them just on that logic alone. But yeah, other than that, I would really look at just assist points farming. Arthur Cluckers possibly might get a top 10 on that final TT, but not much more than that. I would say that's probably about it for the 4s. I'd probably go assist point farming personally. This is my team. I've got Vacek, Brennan, Kristen, Tesfatsion, Max Poole, Ulissi, Hubarts, Vergelagen just for the assist point farming, and then Boven just for the hope that he might sprint. But realistically, it might be a safe ride here just to go with like a Mihailovic or somebody just for the assist points, to be honest. And I think this is a decent team. You got a lot of GC riders in here with Ulissi and Poole, Vacek, Kristen. Brennan is a bit of everything. Tesfatsion, I think, is a really good value for money rider, as is Hubarts, because they might come top 10 GC if they're lucky. And then just a couple of 4s to fill out the team. Obviously, in terms of other people I'm considering at the moment, I'd be tempted to take Van Hills instead of Ulissi, possibly, but I like Ulissi just because he's got a good reputation with this race. Like, he just does quite well. I could just go with Coy just to bank in points early on and then put those into my 4s to, try and get, ideally somebody like try get Finn Fisher-Black in here, or if I was trying to get an 8 credit rider, I might try get a Hater or Hermans, for example. But I'm quite happy with this team. I think it's got a lot of everything going on, and sometimes when I just mess around less with my teams, they do better. But let me know what you're thinking in the comment sections down below. Is there anybody who I missed that you think that we should all be considering for our teams? Put that all in the comment section down below. And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. Salut.